I started playing guitar when I was 14, 15. Being part of the synergy of a band, there is nothing like it. It's beyond words. And having 4 or 5 people all get together, like as if they're on the same heartbeat, you know, and they're playing the same song and the same music and feeding off of each other, that experience was intoxicating. So my name's Adam Rieger. I was born and raised in St. Albert.
Well, I was raised on the wrong side of the road.
I grew up in a Catholic household, but it wasn't something that profoundly influenced my life during my childhood. My mom always talks about this video of my siblings and I, and there's my brother, he's off in the corner and he's constructing something out of Connects, you know, and then I'm sprinting around the room just like out of control, and my sister is running behind me telling me to stop. And so she said that these 3 personality traits kind of stuck with us for most of our lives. Even as I got older in my teenage years, I was always a little more wild, a little more rebellious.
I'm finding the way on my own. I'm gonna see it till it's all gone.
I remember that as soon as I started working, when I was about 15, I stopped going to church because I had an excuse not to, because I was working a lot of Sundays. In high school, I became an atheist. I was really into like metal music and death metal, and I had long hair and I was playing in bands and stuff like that. I just developed this idea that the church was just trying to deceive people and that it wasn't looking out for our best interest. After I graduated high school, I spent a number of years traveling. I went from a very isolated life in the sense that I was just working and I had my band friends, and so I'd party on the weekends, work all week, and then repeat, you know, and throw in a few shows here and there and stuff like that. And then I arrived in Japan, and all of a sudden it was just like the world exploded. And I planned my own trip, but I made it a year long instead of just a couple months. And so that was the beginning. I get home and then I go through like 6 months of depression basically, and maybe not clinical depression, but I had gone from this little bubble I was living in, and all of a sudden the world became this big place. And then I get home and everyone expects me to be back in that little bubble. And so I remember just having all this tension between me and my friends, and I started asking some really deep questions, you know, about like if I'm going to find fulfillment in this life, you know, what is the most powerful and meaningful way I can do that? As far as I could see at the time, that involved more traveling. And by some stroke of what I would say luck or grace, I started reading about hitchhiking online, and I just became fascinated with it. You know, this idea of total freedom. So I started hitchhiking. With this all kind of rattling in my mind, I'm becoming more and more like a hippie, you know, like I'm starting to think about bigger things like nature and just belonging and wanting the same kind of like anti-establishment, like, man, we don't need the government, like we'll just do things on our own. And but I just wanted this like ultra relaxed life. All these things, the hitchhiking and the meditation and the becoming a hippie, they're all getting crunched together over and over again. And eventually I started to, through people like recommended and stuff like that, to start praying for things. Because when you're hitchhiking, you need a lot of stuff. I just prayed, I said, you know, great universe or whoever's out there, you know, I would like a sandwich, like I'm hungry. And within 5 minutes, this woman walks up, she taps me on the shoulder and she says, hey, I got this extra sandwich, did you want it? I was like, no way! This is awesome! Like, yeah, I want your sandwich. And so my prayers were being answered in that fashion on a regular basis, over and over and over and over and over again. I still had a great mistrust of the church at that time, but I was willing to explore the idea of there being a God, or at least, at the very least, a spiritual world.
When I walk beside her, I am the better man. When I look to leave her, she always staggers back again.
When I was traveling and hitchhiking, my guitar was my sustenance. Like I started learning all kinds of songs on the acoustic so that I could play them on the street and make money. And that was how I fed myself. How did I get from wild hippie to seminary? I had this book called the Tao Te Ching, and it's kind of like just like Chinese philosophy, and it talked a lot about humility. And I had zero idea what humility was, but I imagined that working and not getting paid had something to do with humility. So I got on the internet and I looked up volunteering. Then I found the Marian Center. And due to the fact that they were running almost every day, I would just show up. The Marian Center it's a soup kitchen downtown. So they feed the homeless every day. And it's run by a community called Madonna House. So like I'd be hitchhiking, and then I'd come home, and then I'd volunteer there a whole bunch, and then I'd go hitchhiking, and I had this kind of cycle, you know? And I saw that they had what I was looking for, you know? Like they were tapping into the same thing I was. And I recognized that, and I was so enthralled, but I could not understand. I was like, well, how could they be Catholic at the same time? Like they get it, but they're also like sold out to the man on the same level, you know? Like I couldn't understand why these two things would coexist. But as it happened, at the end of I think it was my second summer hitchhiking, my girlfriend at the time broke up with me. And I kind of I just spiraled down. Like, I just suddenly realized how empty I actually felt. And again, the Marian Center kept popping up in my mind. Okay, well, clearly this is a sign, and so I'm gonna go live there, I guess. I didn't know if you could do that, but I figured I should do it. So I move in. It was a really difficult time for me. It was an extremely difficult time. But as time went on, I started to see that their connection with the sacraments was what fueled their spiritual lives. It was the Mass and the Eucharist that was making them capable of being so loving and so accepting. One day I was doing a Pustynia day, which Pustynia is the Russian word for desert, and a Pustynia day is a day where you go into silence. And I had this sudden wave of love just overwhelm me. And no matter what I thought about, all I could experience was love for whatever that thing was. And I remember thinking in that moment of Christ. And it was the first time in my life that I thought of Christ and experienced love. And I just had this immediate affection for Christ. One of the Marian Center members, Patrick Stewart, he recommended that I go see a Ukrainian Catholic priest living up north in Alberta. I hitchhiked up to Beaver Lodge, Alberta. I went to see this guy. I asked to go to confession with this priest. In that confession, I confessed that I didn't trust the church, you know? And I just said, I don't trust the church. I don't trust your teachings or any of it. And as advice, he said to me, Adam, the church is your mother. You should trust your mother. And honestly, from that moment forwards, I never had a problem with the church again. It was like God just pushed all the obstacles out of the way, and I was in, you know? It was really just like one breaking moment. That's when I started to see that the Catholic Church wasn't what I thought it was. And I had never seen the real heart of what the Catholic Church was and what the church was offering to us. From the moment I was receiving the Eucharist again and very involved with the church, frequently I would have this experience where especially after receiving the Eucharist, where I'd be praying and I'd think, man, being a priest would be a great life. And I would always kind of just push it away or get distracted or move on to other things. But I also had this sense growing in me that I'm going to devote my life in a special way to God. And for me, the fruit of that was this idea of a pilgrimage. I decided to go from Marion Centre, Edmonton, which is downtown, to their mother house of Madonna House, which is in Combermere, Ontario. I would just walk, and I would accept whatever was given to me. That journey ended with a really serious injury in my legs, and so I damaged the nerves in my legs pretty bad, and what resulted was basically a chronic pain condition that has gotten better, but has never fully healed. And so, I was bedridden for almost a year in the beginning because I was having severe and constant pain. It took me another year before I was back on my feet doing intensive physiotherapy. It took about 4 years before I could work full time and live a normal existence. I also developed chronic headaches. So not only could I not leave the house, I couldn't get off the couch. But this, by far, was the most formative period of my entire life. It literally felt, and I had this experience that God was rebuilding me. This experience taught me about the connection between suffering and prayer. This is an extremely priestly connection. It's the offering up sacrifices for the people. That experience really prepared me for the priesthood. And obviously I'm not there yet, and I'm still a seminarian and discerning, but yeah, it was incredible. It was really something. If I could say something to my younger self, that there's a goodness in this world that you can't even imagine. You know, there's someone so beautiful, so loving, that it'll change your entire life. Jesus is the beloved that brings this ultimate fulfillment into our grasp. And that's, indispensable.
40 days and 40 nights, and it says